Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Happy Labor Day in Canada and the U.S. And we're still working because that's the kind of people we are. And, well, for me, it's like I'm a loser. So, of course, I'm going to do a show on Labor Day. These guys, I'm not going to say that. Okay, we'll start with the.
I don't know. I don't know, Michael. I'm starting to feel like this is like an association thing here now. Thanks, bud. Appreciate it. Jeez.
Okay, let's start the pre-show. Go ahead, Ross.
Well, oddly enough, Tony Soprano guessed the pre-show, but 3 years ago, and it's still up on my Sportsology YouTube, I did an interview with Cody and Brandy Rhodes, future Jets at that time, linebacker C.J. Mosley, and somebody else. And basically this was for a reality show. And the way they did this interview was I was at home, they were in a studio. And so we communicated that way. And it was very interesting. And at one point to Cody, I brought up that, hey, I heard you're starting a wrestling alliance called All Elite Wrestling. And he was like really thrilled that I brought that up. And so he only talked about it for a minute or two, and he was hopeful back then. And, now last night, they put the smackdown on the WWE by getting Daniel Bryan. They've got Adam Cole and CM Punk wrestling on a pay-per-view, and they also picked up like the Big Show. They've got Sting a little while back.
Wow.
They are going to make people watch. I saw the ratings, and when it was going up against the WWE, I think it was about 600,000 views, and then when the WWE stopped broadcasting on that evening against them, it went up to about 900,000. So the WWE now has some legit competition.
I think, but I will say this. I think one of the keys, with AEW, I think they have a lot of recognizable names, veterans who have been in the WWE. The one thing, though, that I think is the lifeblood of AEW is the as CM Punk has brought up on the show, on the broadcast and everything. Their lifeblood is the young wrestlers that they have. I feel like they got guys in that business, at least, that when you watch their matches, these matches have a certain crackle and thrill to them that we used to get. Not quite ECW crazy, but there's that sort of added edge to their matches that I don't see with WWE.
I can name you one. A little less than a year ago, I interviewed. Actually, it's 2 years now. Wow. Melissa Cervantes, who's Thunder Rosa, and she was actually in MMA at the time. But she was doing Lucha Libre wrestling too, and so she had done both. And now she has done really well in that league. And she was probably just looking for another break. She had broken through and not in professional wrestling here, but like in Mexico. And so now that's been big for her too. So I also saw that their women's division has a lot of good young talent there that somewhere in the WWE, somewhere, and like you said, just young talent overall, just lesser known talent. And if I'm the WWE, I'm worried now.
Well, in the past, all these other associations ended up doing was being feeder leagues for the WWE. They would, if it's somebody actually hit, they would bring that person in. They would buy them out, or if they.
The old NWA, which became WCW, that was probably WCW was probably the biggest competition I think that we had ever seen versus the WWF/WWE. But I think it's healthy for the business. I think it's it also forces WWE to not have to they have to. We all know this stuff goes in ebbs and flows, and then WWE's got to has certainly at this point now has to consider adjusting their approach. I think
to me their approach is they've had a bad habit of cutting wrestlers way too soon just to kind of save money or to go in a ridiculous different direction or whatever it is they were trying to do, and that's how AEW was getting all of them. And now they're pointing out that Bray Wyatt's going to head over there, and that's what I'm saying. The WWE kind of like gets talent, raises it to a new level with marketing and some good matches, and then cuts them unexpectedly. And then when they cut them unexpectedly, then they now become competitors.
Now, let me bring this up before we start the show. Anybody, and this is a forewarning to anybody who is out there interested in purchasing furniture. If you do,
I don't know anybody, Mike, but go ahead.
Well, no, I'm telling you because I like on the weekend I was looking. I've been looking for a new couch and a new ottoman or a new coffee table. And here are the two key words that you must look for: in stock. Because if you are looking to buy a couch or buy any kind of furniture and it's not in stock in their warehouse, the common time frame for you to get that couch or that coffee table or whatever is 6 months. 6 months. Because because of the pandemic, most of these things are built in Southeast Asia, and like Vietnam apparently is shut down right now. And there is no chance that you're going to get your couch or your table or whatever before Christmas. It's probably going to be in the new year. And that really sucks.
Welcome to the reality, Matt, Mike, about, this is where we are. We rely on these supply lines, and ultimately when these supply lines are disrupted, everybody is affected in this circumstance. They don't have workers that are working. And I look at it as, people need to gain a new appreciation, because I think we're so used to getting things like snappy,
right,
that when things get disrupted, we forget that things, used to take a bit more time sometimes for it to get to us. And we've been living in 80 years since World War II, probably, of almost in different forms of having on-demand things.
Well, it also affects in terms of like gamers, like people who love like Xbox or PlayStation.
Yeah, they want to get a PS5. The problem is all the chips are, that there's a chip shortage.
Chip shortage. Yeah.
So
Try getting a car.
Yeah,
Impossible. Friends have told me it's impossible to get even used cars, especially also now. It's impossible to get either.
I went into a GameStop I'd say a month or so ago, just out of curiosity, not high on my list of getting a new Xbox, but just was curious what the time frame was. And they said, well, there's an Xbox S, which is the one that is download off online, and there is no disc.
Yep.
And those are sort of available, not readily, but sort of available, and they're like $300. The ones with the disc, those are $500, and good luck trying to get one in 2021.
Yeah.
So it's just, I don't know if I'm assuming that has to do with the chip being available or whatever.
It's exactly what it is. It's the lifeblood of the whole system. If you don't have the chip, there's, then there's going to be a shortage on on what's available.
It's slowed down cell phone sales the same way too.
Yep. Yeah. Everything, again, we're discussing, again, when the supply chain is disrupted, the effects are felt long after the initial impact.
Yep.
All right, let's get the show started. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, September 6th, 2021.
I'm Jan Levine, and happy Labor Day to everybody.
I'm Anthony Mingioni. Happy Labor Day, everybody.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast. And I'm not wishing everybody a happy Labor Day, and I'm working. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
If you call this work, Mike.
Yes, yes, I do.
You said at least you said it, Russ.
I do. This is how I make my living. So this is work.
I guess in the pure definition of the word, let you get away with it, Mike, but you're stretched it a bit here.
I'm working. No. Okay,
that'll be the first.
Yeah. Wow. How did Notre Dame do yesterday?
You started last night, baby. Hey, 41-38. You started last night.
About to go duck the shrapnel now.
Yes. Oh God. Anyway, so it was a rather busy weekend when you, especially in Raleigh and La Belle Provence, as the Carolina Hurricanes get Jesperi Kotkaniemi because the Montreal Canadiens do not match the 1-year $6.10035 million offer sheet. They get a first and a third round pick in compensation for Kotkaniemi, and then flip one of their firsts and a 2024 second to the Arizona Coyotes for Christian Dvorak. So let's start first with the Kotkaniemi thing, Russ. Clearly, the amount, the cap hit for Kotkaniemi was the big factor with Montreal because they're up against it. But I think I think it's reasonable to say, even though Marc Bergevin will shine it off as they loved Kotkaniemi, they thought they were not high on him after 3 years. I think they treated him badly. They jerked him back and forth between the AHL. He was in and out of the lineup. They didn't find it worthwhile to match a $6.1 million offer sheet because they weren't sure what he was after 3 years. So I think that was the main reason.
So there's a few things. I guess the first one is, like I had said last show, I really didn't know which way this was going to go because I could see it going both ways. I do think there was a point when maybe Ducharme was just looking to play veterans, and some people and a lot of people took that as they don't value Kotkaniemi. I don't think that was the case. I think they were paying him what they thought they could pay him.
Right.
Again, with the whole, and again, this is the first guy since 2007 and Dustin Penner to actually get stolen from a team.
Mm-hmm.
He's gotten paid twice his market value, more than that. So yeah. I don't think that that's on the Canadiens. I don't think they were lowballing him. No team would want to pay him $6 million for any season. And I think the big thing here is, and what I think has gotten convoluted in this whole mess, is somehow people are trying to say that the Canadiens got the better of this. And I say, you know what? Kotkaniemi still has more upside than Dvorak. I think Dvorak has reached his ceiling. I think he's a good player.
I disagree with you.
That's fine. Well, let me finish. I think he's reached his ceiling. We're talking about a 40, 45-point guy. And, again, unless you're playing with someone like Panarin, we could see what, like, a Ryan Strome is really not a second-line center, but he plays it. That's what Montreal is going to be up against now.
Well,
and they're going to have a tough time against teams with good centers because as good as Nick Suzuki is, all of a sudden – they don't have the face-off shark on that team.
Well, Anthony, let's stick to the Kotkaniemi part of it
sure.
Before we go to the Dvorak part of it, because I think did they value Kotkaniemi as a former third overall pick as a 21-year-old kid? Sure. Yeah. But there's potential there, and I think Montreal's culpable for his failures up to this point because they rushed him, because they yo-yoed him back.
That's the problem.
I think their calculation was, okay, not just is he a $6.1 million player, but where do we think that he tracks as a player, and do we think he's going to be worth that much down the road? And I think the calculation from Bergevin was, I'd rather have the draft picks to trade someplace else than invest in this guy.
And I also think he greatly, and while we don't necessarily want to completely jump into Dvorak immediately, I do think the calculus on Dvorak has to be accounted for here because there's been enough reports out of Montreal that says that Bergevin has very much coveted Dvorak for quite some time and was trying to get some sort of an angle. And I think this situation opened that door. Now, again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Kotkaniemi in Carolina. They're going to play him on the left wing. They're not playing him at center to start. So are they playing him with his good buddy Aho? And since that's obviously a major part of the factor as to why you wanted to go there. 6.1. I think we're all in agreement here. Way outstrips, and I'm sure some NHL teams right now are very, very much watching this situation. You worry about the market impact, and then you get in and it gets very interesting to see what the follow-on contract's going to be and how that potentially, how this was designed and what the next contract will be for Kotkaniemi, whether it's this year and coming up.
The interesting thing here, like Anthony said, is that Kotkaniemi is going to start on the wing in Carolina. I mean, they have Aho, they have Jordan Staal, they have Necas who can play center, they have Trocheck. So there's no need to play him at center right now, but they do see him as a center down the road. So him playing on the wing and having less defensive responsibilities to start with probably is a good move, and that's something that was not available to him in Montreal. This is symptomatic of what Montreal has done over the last decade. Galchenyuk up the middle when he was not a center, Drouin up the middle when he was not a center, and now Kotkaniemi. The same friggin' book every year.
Well, they could have moved him to wing last year because you had Deneau at center, right? And Deneau was a perfect number 2 center on that team. I think actually you're going to see Kotkaniemi playing second line wing. I think you're going to see Svechnikov on the left wing on the first line still with Aho and Teravainen, and then have him on the second line with Trocheck. So short term, Trocheck's got one more year left. In my opinion, the likely move is you'll see Kotkaniemi, assuming they resign him, and obviously Elliot Friedman has reported we're looking at a probably 5-6 year deal, maybe $4.5 million in that range is what they've spoken about, which was probably part and parcel of the negotiations to get him to sign the 1 year offer sheet to lock in that longer term deal. I think I'll tell you, look, I think we all agree he was miscast as the 3rd overall pick in general. He got rushed to the NHL and probably should have spent time, but they wanted to get him the experience and pushed him and rushed him way too early. And Russ and I can talk about guys, Manny Malhotra comes to mind years ago when the Rangers kind of threw him in the lineup and he had no right to being there. Same with Kotkaniemi, probably deserves some additional time in juniors or in the AHL. He gets a chance to kind of look, not a bad 3 centers to learn. They're Aho, Trocheck, and Stahl. And Stahl is a perfect guy for him to learn next to in terms of how to play that game to be a number 2 center, which was what he was down, in Pittsburgh for a little while before he shifted obviously to the 3rd line center there. And then similarly in Carolina, I think Trocheck is gone at the end of the year. Even if he has a good year, I think you're going to see Kotkaniemi slide into that 2 slot. You're going to see Stahl in that 3rd slot. Carolina can spin it all they want. Look, and we talked, Mike, you talked about working. Well, the public relations departments had their fill of working over the last week or so because they offer sheet champions. I mean, just the kind of shade and the stuff looks fun. It's good for the game to a certain extent. It builds a level of interest. Did it get sophomoric after a point in time? Yeah. Look, the problem is Kotkaniemi. His production will probably rise a little bit because he'll play left wing and he'll play with Trocheck. Will it rise to the point that somebody's going to go, he's scoring X amount of points? He's getting $6.1 million. Did the two of them equate each other? No. This was a way to kind of them to throw a shot across the bow, in my opinion. They probably should have waited 2 years when Suzuki or Caulfield is an RFA and then try to sign one of them as opposed to doing it for just Jesperi Kotkaniemi. But will he help that team? Yeah, he lengthens them down the left side. They're a solid team. He may end up on the 3rd line for all we know down the road, playing next to Stahl for part of the season also, which then is going to be the equation. Is he worth $4.5 million on a long-term deal, even if you think he's going to pan out as a number 2 center there?
And Stahl's up after 2 years, and then after that, they're still strong up the middle with Aho, Neckish, and Kotkaniemi. So I mean, I think they set themselves up for the future. But I'll just say this, and then I want to move on to the Dvorak part of it. The social media thing regarding Carolina is just sophomoric and trollish. I mean, if that's the new world we live in, okay, I'm a 54-year-old guy. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. But if they want to go down that road, fine. Throwing things in the face of the Canadiens is always entertaining.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Hold on 1 second. You throw things into the faces of the Canadiens all the time, Michael.
Right, but I'm an individual, Anthony. I'm not a member of the 32 club NHL. This is
you need to raise public awareness to a certain extent. Do I particularly love it? No, but this gets people talking. This gets interest. You need eyeballs on the sport. You may I don't particularly love it, but I'm sure there are a lot of other people talking about that's true on Mike. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are not fans who are going, what the heck is this Carolina thing going on? It's sort of like the high school football team that everybody's talking about also, right? It's become the cost celeb that's out there, but
it is their brand.
People are talking about it.
And it's their brand as a team. We know that going right back to the celebrations at center, all their celebrations from a few seasons ago, led by, Justin Williams kind of led that whole thing. And this is part of who the Carolina Hurricanes are. And they are all about, poking fun at they are fun at poking at the establishment. That is what they do.
Excuse me. I have to take my Geritol.
I mean, it is better to poke fun at it when you're actually winning, though. Yeah, that's the only part that I think.
And that's the part. Yeah, you better be winning in this circumstance because then the cheekiness begins to start to, especially for the fan. And again, maybe it's a situation where in a market like Carolina, it's pulled off easier than say one of your traditional markets, even when things aren't going quite as well.
Now transitioning to the Dvorak part of it. Because Russ, I mean, I think we all think that Dvorak is a good player. He's gonna be plugged in as the number 2 center in Montreal now. I know I saw some, he'll probably play with Toffoli and Anderson or maybe Drouin. Russ, analysis I heard of Dvorak, I mean, it sort of does not match with what you've been saying about him, because they said strong on faceoffs, good on the power play, good on the PK, good second line guy, 40 to 50 points. You're more critical of him that he doesn't fit all those.
Well, because I think we just throw around 40 to 50 points. Like, he had 31 points in 56 games. Maybe he'll track that way. Maybe he won't. I mean, again, it's going to depend on the matchups. I look at him and I say, okay, he might be good on the PK, but as a center defensively, he's not great. He's okay. He's good. He's not above average. He doesn't track as a second line center in this league. He's got a good shot. He is not particularly fast. He's fast enough. He's good in a lot of categories. He's not great in any one of them. And if we're going to call 52% like on faceoffs, great. That's his lower mark in the last 2-3 years. So it's like, what are we talking about now for great faceoff guys in the league? Are we like, is 50% it? Because if that's it, then everybody could have a second line center, but I don't think that's it.
Anthony, I heard the criticism that, based on he's not the fastest center, that he probably needs some.
Is Sean Couturier the fastest center?
Right. But he probably
is faster than Dvorak.
Is Kevin Hayes the fastest center?
No,
but he is John Tavares. But he probably needs somebody on his line to lug the puck. That he's not going to be the one to carry it up the ice. That if he's playing with a Drouin is a great skater. That he could be the one.
They will need to be a balanced line. There's no question about it. You need to have someone who's, again, it's your classic role of, he has to think about things as the playmaker. But I think if you have someone who, again, if you have an Anderson, he has a bigger body with him, plus a guy who's got some decent speed. My feeling is, again, he's going to have an opportunity to play with better players in Montreal than he did in Arizona. And if he tracks the way he has tracked, I think he can be somewhere in that, somewhere in the above 50, potentially approaching 60, which would be second line, which in my mind is second line center production.
And at a relatively reasonable cost at about $4.45 million and signed for 4 more years. And look, that may be where he tops out if he's consistent in that range for the next several years. And I think he's going to end up playing with Caulfield and Hoffman for all we know, right? Because Gallagher's probably first line right wing is probably what you're going to see there. And you see Toffoli maybe on the left wing on the first line or on the second line. Clearly a lot more talent to play with than in Arizona. I mean, that's for certain. Look, they parlayed what they got in Kotkaniemi and parlayed the return of those picks, the first and the third, and upped it a little bit to a first next year. And granted, it depends on which one of the 2 picks they give him, and a second round in 2024. So they were able to use the picks that they have. Arizona is clearly in teardown mode. They're in suck for Shane mode right now, right? It's Shane right or bust for that franchise, and they have an enormous amount of picks, and we don't know where they're going to be in the next year or so, given what's going on in Glendale. But they opted that they're kind of doing the teardown, and it's been pretty evident in terms of how deep and how wide that teardown is going. But Montreal, look, the other alternative was for them to move Jonathan Drouin back to center, which is clearly not the best option for them either, right? So now you get a quote-unquote legitimate number 2 center that can slide in behind Suzuki. He takes a little bit of the pressure off Suzuki, though. Suzuki is going to have the target on his back, given that he is the number 1 offensive guy there. But if he does get to play with Hoffman,
he would have been anyway,
he has talented wingers next to him, Dvorak, that'll help ease the requirements he's going to have down the middle. And he's okay defensively, but look, 52% as a center. Russ, give me that on the Rangers, and I'd be doing backflips given what I've seen between the dots on that team. So
he gets his points from Panarin, but that's my basic point here.
Yeah, but Strome played well when Panarin was out also last year. So I'm not going to say every production he has last year is Panarin generated.
His point level went up like 15, 20.
But so would anybody. But almost anybody who played with Panarin would see an uptick.
That's my point with Dvorak. He has nobody there to raise his point level by like 20
but
points.
You need somebody in this
category.
But you need somebody to play on that line.
A dynamic player. He's not. He's got good players on the line. They are good players, but none of them are superstars.
But would you put Jake Evans as your number 2 center as opposed to having Dvorak? Right. So you need somebody there who can play with those guys.
That doesn't mean he's like a top 10 second line center either.
Well, nobody's
saying he's a top 10.
But if he's an athlete,
probably a bottom 5 one.
But when Jake Evans was your possible option as a number 2 center until they made that deal, this is a dramatic upgrade. Is it is it perfect? And do I want Dvorak going up against Matthews or Tavares or Barkov or either Stamkos or Point or
they don't have a Danault now to bail them out. Like they don't have a face-off shark on that team anymore.
Well, and I think
they should have signed Nate Thompson when they had the chance.
I think everybody agrees. And just to a greater or lesser extent, Montreal is going to take a dramatic step back this year because Weber's not there.
They are going to take a step back.
Yeah, I mean, do they still?
I don't know if it's dramatic, but they'll take a step back. But the other thing,
Mike, Caulfield all season. Also, you have Hoffman, which helps you out on the wing. But it's has a really good season like he did last year. So I think defensively they take a step back. Price has a little bit more pressure on him because he just doesn't have defense as he had in the past in front of him. Offensively, look, Kotkaniemi, the viewpoint is it's potential versus production, and we don't ever know if he's actually going to hit the 50-point mark as a center or a winger. Given what we've seen so far, he was rushed. The expectations, there's still talent there, but given what we saw the last 3 years, I don't think anybody hand on heart would say, "Oh yeah, I clearly expect him to take that next step and become that kind of player down the road." I think he has talent. Whether he puts it all together, I think the jury's very still far out.
Montreal's going to put undue pressure on Romanov now because they don't have a choice. That's where the pressure's. But I have to say,
then again, but hey, Russ, at the same time, you wanted to see Romanov play a lot in the playoffs, so
because
that's the lean on now.
So
that was Romanov with Weber in the lineup. Romanov without Weber in the lineup, that's going to put a lot of pressure on him.
He wanted to see Romanov. He wanted to see Romanov in the lineup because he's better than Brett Kulak.
Correct. That was why.
Well, you're not saying much.
Right.
No, it's not saying much. The other thing, though, with Arizona here, it's not like Arizona got a great deal here. It's a conditional first because it's lottery protected.
Really? I got so many people telling me what an amazing job Bill Armstrong is doing right now in asset acquisition, and it's by 2027.
Well, okay, it's lottery protected, but they get the better of the two. So if Montreal misses the playoffs, they push the pick to the next year. Because Montreal's pick would be the better of the two picks, because Carolina's pick is going to be in the 20s. So, I mean, it could be.
It still could be a pick in the 15 to 18 range. Yeah. That's what it is. Well, and then your second round pick is 3 years from now. This is not a great trade.
Here's the thing that I find hilarious.
Not with a guy who's low salaried like that.
Here's the thing I find hilarious. If you look at Arizona on Cap Friendly or Cap Central, I'll read off 6 names here: Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Andrew Ladd, Jacob Chikrin, Shane Gostisbehere, and Connor Timmins. What do they all have in common? They're the only players on the Arizona Coyotes 23-man roster that are signed after next season. They have over a dozen UFAs.
They're the worst team in hockey.
I mean, I'm sorry.
The better question is, Mike, is who's going there, right? So if they get Shane Wright in the draft, that's clearly a draw, and that gives them the opportunity to build around him and use him as a centerpiece to attract players. Let's say they finish with the worst record, which I think we all do, and the lottery balls don't go in their favor. That team is sunk for several more years again, despite the number of picks that they have.
Yeah, I'm assuming, Barrett Hayton and Soderstrom are going to be in their lineup because
Hayton's not a second line center. That's going to really be bad. That's right, really.
But they have to and need to give him the opportunity now because this roster. I mean, they have nothing. They have nothing to lose. I mean, they're going to be 32nd or 31st in the league, so they may as well give their kids, if they're ready to have them get a chance, to give them a chance in the NHL to see what they have. But I mean, if you needed a sign that this organization is clearly on the way out in Arizona, what they're doing right now is exhibit A in terms of what, because honestly, if they were going to stay in Arizona, how can they justify this crap lineup that they're doing?
Yeah, we either have a temporary situation that's going to be in Tempe, or they become a pseudo expansion team in whatever new market that they go to, where they can say, hey, we're leaving, we'll keep some of the parts that we already have, but we're going to quote unquote leave the past behind and start anew. And
I like the Kraken better than I like them. That's the funny thing. And I don't love the Kraken
at the moment. If you look at the rosters and everything, of course you like the Kraken more than them on paper.
That's not saying much there, Mike. The roster.
I know.
Now,
I like Kraken better than Buffalo, maybe also, but that's not saying a hell of a lot either right now.
One thing that came out of this, and it didn't come from Eck, because we know Eck has always been, the pom-pom cheerleader for offer sheets.
Yeah.
That the Kotkaniemi offer sheet and now the resulting him moving from Montreal to Carolina will all of a sudden spur a string of offer sheets potentially for guys like Kaprizov or Tkachuk or Dahlin or the two in Vancouver. Well, there's one difference. None of those teams that have the ability to match in all 5 of those situations are up against it, are up against the cap. Montreal or Buffalo, Minnesota, even Vancouver, and Ottawa, they have boatloads of cap space. So if somebody offer sheets Brady Tkachuk, unless it's completely ridiculous, and even if it's ridiculous, they'll probably match it. All of them are going to match that. So I don't think that all of a sudden we're going to see offer sheets galore.
Well, I mean, look what they just played. Look where they just played Batherson, right? You expect Tkachuk's going to be fairly hefty a raise over what Batherson got, and even then they could probably go higher if they had to get the guy in the contract. He's the face of your franchise. He's the face of your franchise. They're going to have to just sign him.
The indications that I've heard from Ottawa through the media have been it's not about the money, which is unusual for Eugene. It's about the term. They want to get Tkachuk locked up for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And like his brother in Calgary and like his friend from USA Hockey, Austin Matthews, they don't want to sign a long-term deal. They want to hit another big payday in their 20s. Matthews signed a 3-year deal at $7 million. He's coming up for RFA, I think, next year. Matthews has got 3 years left on his deal. They're going to hit another big payday at 25, 26, something like that. So that's what Brady wants, and I think Ottawa wants what they gave Shabbat. They want the 8-year deal. So that's what I think is holding up that. Russ, I heard Kaprizov. The report from Elliot Friedman yesterday was 5 years, $45 million, $9 million per.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting. I figured he was going to get that top number that Guerin wanted, and we knew it would be about 5 years. I fully expect that's what it's going to come in at, and at some point, 4 years into it, he'll get traded. I mean, he's going down the Artemi Panarin path, and they're going to have to win, but that gives him a window, and I think Guerin will do the most that he can with that window. I got to mention, I just saw a tweet from the New Jersey Devils that I really don't get. They were just like, finally, Dawson Mercer is in camp. And it's like, hold on. Like, he's 19 years old. Like, why finally? Why? I mean, where do you expect him to be?
Because they want everybody, because you know how it is with the Devils. You have to get everybody excited about every
let's not overblow it, though. Like, even Jack Hughes still has to live up to untapped potential yet, and now you're going to start heaping it on Mercer? Like, I just don't understand it.
Remember
they'll start it for Luke Hughes pretty soon also, right? They'll have the two brothers again, so that'll be the next hype machine that starts also.
Twiddle your thumbs.
Again, look, the thing was a Kaprizov, remember, same thing with Tkachuk. They also want the shorter term deal, not only because they want to get the second payday. They want to see what the team has done around them to make that team a contender, right? Minnesota has Boldy, they have Rossi. There's guys there that you can build around that are young. Ottawa's got a really good prospect system. Some of the guys like Logan Brown and other guys haven't panned out yet, but Tkachuk probably wants to say, okay, I'll take the shorter term deal. Let me see what you do around me to build a team around me, so I'm basically not the only weapon that you have there. And if I don't see that, then I'm going to go elsewhere because I'm going to get the same amount of money irrespective of where I'm playing.
Batherson, Formanton, Stützle, Sanderson. I mean, there's a lot of
talent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent, but it's got to, again, Smith has to get that all coalesced and working in the right direction.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this question. Do any of you feel like Brady Tkachuk could be heading to a holdout? Because I don't know. I all of a sudden feel like that's.
No. I think something came out, though. I just saw that he's not coming to camp until he's signed. I just saw something. I saw it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that.
Just before. Sean Simpson just tweeted, I'm told that Tkachuk won't be coming to Ottawa until he gets a deal done. No update on contract talks over the weekend. Let's see if any progress has been made over the last week. That's what just came out literally about an hour ago. So.
I didn't know about that. I only knew about the previous tweet from Sean 3 or 4 days ago that for some reason Tkachuk's camp didn't have an offer that they felt like was good, reasonable, whatever the wording they used.
Right.
And so I do feel like there's a chance he could be a holdout here.
See, this is the weird situation here. I have a feeling that Tkachuk is probably looking for this, and this is similar to Matthews. Tkachuk is looking for the same amount of money on a 5-year deal that Ottawa is looking to pay him on an 8-year deal.
Right.
That's, I mean, everybody said, well, the Leafs are paying Matthews $11.6 million. They should have gotten him for 8 years. The deal wouldn't have gotten done if it was 8 years. He wanted the shorter deal. That's where these players have the whip hand, and they want to hit another payday, just like Jonathan Taves and Patrick Kane did off of their ELC. They signed a 5-year deal.
He did hold out.
If you are one of the best. And this is true in the NBA. We don't see I saw it. We just saw in Philadelphia with Joel Embiid. He got a supermax contract. That deal's 4 years.
Yeah.
So part of that's the player, but part of that is also just where things are and how you want to see things built around you before you commit to it long term. Because whatever your contract is now, as the markets change over that 8-year period, you're if you're giving that level of production, but now you're underpaid. Then you're still going to have to renegotiate. Then you're going to be in a negotiation situation where you don't have the hammer the way you normally would, and you're hoping for the team to be in good faith and give you a better.
That protects your downside risk, right? If you struggle, right, you're now kind of locked into your
it
contract.
does, but that's
balance you're taking.
But no athlete is thinking that way. That.
I think the annoyance here in the Tkachuk.
That's true. I mean, again, we've seen how many long-term deals have really panned out to be good value deals when you've taken a look at them.
Draisaitl.
Most of them don't. Yeah, Draisaitl will be one.
Great deal,
Okay. Yeah. Okay, you've named the one. Yeah.
Couturier. Couturier.
Are you just signed an 8-year deal, Couturier? Let's see.
What is your definition of long term? 5 years or more?
No, 7 years, 7, 8 years.
Patrick Kane's deal's been great.
Yes.
Yep. But you can argue that. Look, I think Taves was also until the last 2 years, and then look, we talked about this in baseball. So you hope you get 4 or 5 really great years, right? And then your next 2 are middling, and then your back end is where you're going to end up struggling, and that's kind of the equation you have to figure out. Is are you gaining enough in those early years to warrant the balancing off of your latter years where your production may not meet the requirement in terms of the dollars?
Yeah, the McDavid deal is a good deal. The thing that I think has annoyed the Tkachuk camp, and it's not because because he was a former holdout. I don't think that's it. I think they were talking to him. They didn't like the offer, so then they pivoted to Batherson. And then it's like, I think that annoyed him. I think that was like, hey, finish my deal first.
Ottawa's like, let's get the deal done that we can get done, and then we'll take care of the one. Because, I mean, they're not up against it, Russ. I mean, they have tons of cap space. But here, I mean, I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to put pressure on Tkachuk to give him that long-term deal. If what I'm surmising is correct, in that they're basically, the Tkachuk camp is looking for what they're offering on an 8-year deal for a 5-year deal, then you could have a staring contest probably until the beginning of the exhibition schedule, because they're going to, they want, clearly they want him as the linchpin power forward on that team, and they want him for as long as possible because
he wants to get market value for that.
Right, and I don't know whether they want to pay him market value. They got Shabbat at $8 million. Now
that's a great contract.
That's a great contract.
Well, it's a great contract for whom? The team or the player, or both?
For both. It was good for both.
It's a fair contract.
Yes.
Look, I think Shabbat still has growth in him to get to another level.
Yeah.
Right, but here, let me put it this way: does he have to be at a Norris Trophy level?
No.
Or that contract to be warranted? Again,
anymore.
It's a valid question based upon.
It is.
Does he have to be a top 10 candidate Norris Trophy wise? Let's put it that way.
I think he has to be a 50 to 55 point defenseman who logs 25 minutes a night. Yeah. That's what I think. Because he got that $8 million out of his ELC. So he was 21 when he signed it. So
it's like Makar also, right? Same type thing, right? You think about guys like that. There's going to be Adam Fox in another year also.
Right, but that was only a 5-year deal for Makar.
But if
because he wanted the
was it a 3-year deal? Hold on, I thought it was a 5.
I thought it was a 5 too, but I could be wrong. I think the problem for Ottawa here is
6.
Okay, if they really feel like they could somehow sneak up on some teams and compete, and Kachuk knows this, then he has them over a barrel. Because the problem is Ottawa needs to. I'll tell you why. Hold on, Jack. Ottawa needs to fill the seats. They need money desperately, especially now with the pandemic. At least easing up so they can get some people in the building. If he's not there, that's a lot less people showing up.
I think the key with Ottawa is one thing. Can Matt Murray be the Matt Murray a couple of years ago with Pittsburgh, right? If Murray plays well, that's the problem is, right, I think we all think offensively there's a lot of talent there or projected talent potentially coming up through the system. Even defensively to a certain extent also. I think the key is who is their goalie of the future and how quickly can that future get here?
Well, I think it's Gustafsson because they kept him and they have him under contract.
Well, I mean, Murray is the goalie of the now.
That's what he is.
And for what they need to do to be successful, they have to lighten the burden on him because there a lot of times he was facing 40 shots a night and he was getting worn down, and he's not a guy who really can withstand. His injury history in Pittsburgh was the main reason Pittsburgh decided to go with Jari over him. So I don't know. I mean, is Philip Gustafsson going to be the one who steps in?
That's what they're hoping.
To me, that's their weakness, right? That's if you look at it, kind of an Achilles heel that they have that they need to bolster, and they've done a good job. Look, their prospect pool is one of the top prospects pools in the leagues right now, based upon what we've seen, and they still have a lot more picks. Also, between the pipes is really where they need to kind of remediate, and that's the piece of the puzzle that I think. They're going to have to go in. They're going to probably have to go out in free agency or try to make a trade for a young goalie on a team that's got a couple of goalies and try to find their guy for the future. Murray was the stop.
Eventually, you're going to have to pay that guy too, Jan, and that's the issue here.
And you're paying Murray three more years at over $6 million. That you've made your investment. So
none of us. I don't think any of us were particularly loving that deal when they made it either.
No,
I mean Pittsburgh wanted to go with Jari. They wanted to get rid of Murray, and they found Ottawa needed a goalie, but they're also dealing with the ramifications of a longer-term deal now.
I'm stunned that I'm still stunned that they paid him over $6 million. I mean, he was a guy that I thought the Leafs were going to go after, but the Leafs would have never paid him $6 million. That was
they wouldn't have.
Okay, now we're going to play our usual our game that we normally play at this time of year, but I'll preface it with this. Over the last week or so, we have seen players making their decisions, either taking PTOs or opting for Europe. In terms of PTOs, former Ranger Jack Johnson signed one with Colorado. Yeah, I know. We saw Pittsburgh sign Brian Boyle and Matt Barkowski to PTOs. Hosang was earlier in the year, and I think that's more of an opportunity for him to play with the Marlies than anything with the Leafs. But over the last couple of days, Russ, we've seen guys who may have been borderline one-year contracts or PTOs decide to go to Europe. Marco Dano, who has been a journeyman, he's going. I think the Czech.
He was rushed, and it ruined him.
Yeah, he's going to the Czech Republic. Dominic Cahoon is going to Europe as well. The one I found
That's a shame, actually. I think there's a little talent with Cahoon.
Yeah, but he didn't seem to really grasp it with Buffalo and with Edmonton, and he played with Draisaitl, who was his buddy from Germany. It just didn't seem to work. The one that I found humorous was Dennis Malgin has signed a multi-year contract to play in Switzerland. So he's
really good in Switzerland, Mike.
That's he's great. Game. But unfortunately, the Leafs traded for him to play good in the NHL, and they gave up a fourth line guy in Mason Marchment, who outscored Austin Matthews and
Mitch have his rights, Mike. They'll always have his rights. Yeah, keep his rights in a little box.
No. I think now that he signed,
they still have his rights.
They qualified him. I know that. But okay,
they have a little box with his rights in it, and they're going to put a little lock on it.
I've put him in the Europe category and filed him away in that circular file in the corner of the room, Russ.
Korshkov in that file already too.
No, he's on Carolina, so
that's right. He's on Carolina now.
Yes, that's right. But he's lounging about in Magnitogorsk, so that's But the game that we're talking about is our 1-year contract, PTO or nada, and I'll add a fourth category, Europe, because we have some players going to Europe. So 1-year contract, PTO, Europe or nada. Okay. And let's go down.
Music.
Yeah, there you go. We know Zach Parise is signing with the Devils because he said he's signing with the.
It's a 1 year and an option year. If I saw correctly
Really?
from what Russo tweeted.
How is there an option?
I thought it's 1 plus. That's maybe a second year. That's what I thought I saw. So I got to go back and look.
It's probably a 2-year deal. Then if he retires, then
maybe.
I don't know if there's option years.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's what I kind of thought I saw from Russo when he tweeted about it.
Okay, but so we know Parise's going to the Islanders, not the Devils.
Right.
Okay, first one on the list, James Neal, Russ's favorite, James Neal, former Golden Knight, former Penguin, former few other teams. 5 goals in 29 games last year, seemed to not be able to keep up to the pace. He's 33 years old. Will anybody give him a chance? 1-year contract, PTO, nada? What do you think, Jan?
I'm going to go PTO. I'm going to say he's going to go 1 year PTO. I'll caveat that, though. Wouldn't shock me, though, if he ends up in Europe. But I think he'll get a 1 year PTO from some. I think he'll get a PTO from somebody.
Russ?
Yeah, if Jack Johnson got a PTO, he's going to get one.
That's like the line of demarcation. If Jack Johnson got one, then
if Jim Rutherford was still in Pittsburgh, I'd say Pittsburgh would give him the PTO. But
absolutely.
Well, he just gave one to Brian Boyles, though.
Yeah. Maybe Arizona gives him one because they need another old slow body, but I'll say PTO. Okay,
Kessel.
There you go. Travis Zajac, who got traded from the Devils to the Islanders last year, played in the playoffs for the Islanders. He's 36 years old, still had 20 points in 46 games. Russ, 1 year contract, PTO or nada?
He'll get a PTO because he's a center, and he can still do some little things as a center.
Okay, Jan.
Same. I think he showed enough last year that they not look. If Derek Stepan can get signed, anybody can get signed these days. Not like Stepan, but his game has cratered. I think Zajac actually outplayed Stepan last year, so I think Zajac can get a 1 year deal somewhere.
Okay. I'll say PTO, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the Islanders because it's Lou. I don't know if that means he's going to get a contract, but Tyler Bozak, who won a cup with the Blues in 2019, had an injury-shortened year last year because of concussions. I believe it was concussions. 17 points in 31 games. He's 35 years old. I'm surprised. I'll start with this one. I'm surprised that he hasn't been signed to a 1 year contract. At this point, the only thing I would be concerned about is if he hasn't been signed, that the injuries might be what's giving everybody pause. So, Flamester beat me to the punch. I have a feeling that he's going to sign a PTO, and I have a weird feeling it's going to be with the Leafs where he started his career. But Jan, what do you think? Tyler Bozak?
I think Bozak's actually going to retire. I have a hunch that he's going to end up retiring for some reason. I don't think he's going to get a PTO. I mean, if not, if he's going to end up in Europe, I just think he's going to end up retiring. Yeah,
that's the nada category. Russ?
Yeah, I'm going nada.
Okay.
Mike?
Your view? I said PTO with the Leafs.
Okay.
That's still like nada, though.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
There you go. Jason Demers, who had 4 assists in 41 games with the Coyotes last year, and surprisingly, the Coyotes didn't bring him back.
Probably wasn't that good a golfer.
Only 33 years old and a right-hand shot. You would think that those qualities would necessitate him getting a deal. Maybe it's a situation where he gets a deal if somebody gets injured in camp. But Russ, start with you. 1 year contract, PTO or nada?
I guess PTO if somebody does get hurt, but he's really close to being nada at this point. Doesn't matter the age.
Jan?
Same PTO, right-hand shot, could be a 6th defenseman. Teams are always looking for right-handed defensemen.
Yeah, he could be a 12th defenseman somewhere.
I'll say PTO. I think most of these defensemen are going to get a look because defensemen are so they're limited. There's limited capacity with some of these defensemen, so I think that they teams will be willing to take a look. Devin Dubnyk, surprisingly better than some of the goalies who have been signed.
Yeah.
which would lead me to believe that there's something. Remember, he had some family issues.
Yeah.
Went to San Jose last year, then got traded to Colorado. He's 35 years old, played 21 games last year, had an under 900 save percentage. Russ, he's still young enough to play, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'm going to say nada because there's probably certain teams that maybe he wanted to play for so he could stay close to home perhaps. And since that doesn't seem to have come through, I'm going to go nada.
Jan?
I'm going to go he's going to get a one-year deal somewhere as a backup goalie. He's got to be better than some of the other backups in the NHL right now. So I think he could end up as a one-year deal as a second goalie somewhere.
Carter Hutton, we're looking at you.
Well, well, the funny thing is,
I mean, again, Arizona's going with Pusfatov, so maybe if he doesn't pan out, they can look at him late in camp. I mean, that's a guy you would think of. Anthony Stolars is backing up Gibson.
Stolars had a really good year, though, and he's young, and the fact that his injuries were supposed to derail his career, otherwise he was going to be a good goalie. So
does Dubnyk want to subject himself to being pummeled by going to Arizona or Buffalo? I don't think so. I think
I don't know.
Self-preservation would get the better of him in that respect.
Yeah.
So
he's making his money, that's for sure.
Right. Erica Branson, who is 29 years old, former third overall pick. You know, he's not a big offensive player, obviously. Only had 4 points in 45 games, but he's big, he's tough, he's right-handed. I believe, and I said, like I wrote a couple days ago, Toronto was looking for. I'm not. I said Bozak as a possibility. I don't know whether the Leafs would have signed Bozak, but I think they would have given him a look if he wants to continue his career. Branson is somebody they were looking to replace Zach Bogosian. They wanted to have a right-handed veteran on the bottom pairing. I don't know how much Gabranson has left. I don't think he's overly slow, Russ. I think he still has enough that he gets a one-year contract from somebody. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to go 1 year contract with Arizona because he could block Phil Kessel from eating hot dogs.
Wait a second. You're the one who makes the Phil Kessel hot dog joke? What's going on here?
Well, Branson's a good blocker. Yeah. I think a 1 year deal somewhere last minute.
Jan?
Europe. I have a feeling he's going to end up in Europe with a multi-year deal somewhere. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I didn't expect that one. Eric Stahl, 36 years old, was traded from Minnesota to Buffalo to Montreal last year, got to the Stanley Cup final, didn't particularly impress during the playoffs, but, had moments here or there. I don't know whether he's a center anymore, Russ, but do you think he wants to continue the career, or do you think that's the first question? And if so, will he continue it on a PTO?
He's very prideful, so I do think he wants to continue his career. I think he will get a PTO somewhere because they are still going to look at him as a third-line center or nothing. So it's Eric Stahl. I'm not going to completely count him out, even though he hasn't looked great lately, because sometimes the really great players, and I do think he was a great player, can sometimes come out and pull out 1 year that you didn't expect. So we'll say PTO somewhere.
Jan?
I think if he doesn't get a 1 year contract somewhere, he retires. I don't think he goes to camp on PTO. I think, as you mentioned, he's a prideful guy. I don't think he's going to want to go on a PTO with a shot of getting cut at the end of camp. I think if he gets a 1 year deal somewhere, he'll sign. If not, he'll end up retiring. I don't think he's going to go to Europe either.
I agree with Jan. That sounds right down, perfect. And last one, Sami Vatanen, who has pretty much been a journeyman the last couple years. Carolina, the Devils twice, Dallas last year after traded at the deadline or close to it. Russ, he's only 30 years old, but there's, you put him under the category of he's a smaller defenseman, and when he loses the step, then he's a smaller defenseman, and nobody likes smaller defensemen. So what do you think?
I'm going to say he'll get a PTO with Anaheim. I just have this feeling that that's where he'll go back to. Clearly, he does not have a good reputation as a good defenseman anymore because, this last year and a half has been rough on him.
Jan?
Who says you can't go home again? I mean, Anaheim would make sense. I don't think he's going to end up in Jersey again. I would say Anaheim kind of makes sense in terms of given the career arc that he had. I think he's still talented enough to play in the league. I think he could be a third pairing type of guy potentially. So I do think he'll end up in the league somewhere on a 1 year deal. Could be a PTO that he parlays into a deal, but I think he ends up playing the NHL next year.
If not Anaheim, it's probably Europe because, but the thing is, honestly, when it comes to Europe, most of those decisions, like right now, is the cutoff because the KHL is starting, and some of the other leagues are starting in early October or late September. So these players have to make their jump right now. So if it is Europe, then he's probably gone in the next probably this week. But I think he could hook on in Anaheim on a PTO. I mean, Bob Murray was the general manager who I think drafted him. So, there might be an opportunity for him to go back there. All right. Great show, guys. We'll be back.
Wait, hold on. We got a signing.
Oh, go ahead.
So this is interesting because I got an email last week and it was, hey, do you want to interview Riley Shahan because he's doing a podcast on mental health? If there was a little more hockey involved, I probably would have done it because I like Riley.
And he signed with Seattle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good sign for them because as a fourth line guy, he could still play the position. He can.
Yeah, he didn't play badly with Buffalo last year. I mean, he was the least of their problem. They had guys who were good on the fourth line. The problem was they didn't have guys who were good in the top 9. So, okay, great show, guys. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For the departed Anthony Mangione, for Jan Levine, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.